Hello lovely people, it's Nicola in the Stitches and Slapdashery sewing room. I have a new little invention that I wanted to show you how to make today. It is a very cute little progress pride flag. It's got the usual rainbow colours on. It's also got the colours here for trans people and for people of colour. I'll leave a link underneath the video for a website that explains it in full, rather than me try to explain it here. So you can read all about it. This was my first iteration. It's very similar to one that is on Ravelry, but I constructed mine differently after I was struggling with the intarsia chart method that the other person used. And so this one I think is a bit less fiddly. It's made into 2 parts and there's no stranded or intarsia color work. So I'm recording this after I have shown how I was making this by making a 3rd one of these, and I was having a heck of a time. So I'm hoping that this video is sufficiently in focus that you can see what I'm doing. By the time I have edited out all the parts where my phone on the tripod fell over, or I was struggling to crochet while looking at it through the screen or over the top of the phone. But I think it's a really cute thing to make, and I hope you enjoy making it. This is the first of these little progress flags that I made. It's very similar to a design I saw on Ravelry, but the one I saw and started to try to make used intarsia to include these colours into the flag. I found it really, really fiddly to be going across that foundation chain and changing colours for the last couple of stitches and then working back again, changing colours again. So I decided to redesign it and make it up in my own version. So what I have done is I've designed this as a rainbow rectangle, which is very, very simple to make. And then this section is made separately. And when you do the black border round, you attach the 2 layers together here, and then you just do a teeny bit of hand sewing just to tack that down on the V. And I think that was a lot less fiddly. Obviously the face is optional. It makes it look really cute with the eyes. These are, I think, 6mm eyes. They have the washers on the back because they're safety eyes. Now my fabric isn't very tight. If you were to push hard, you could probably pull those eyes right between the stitches. I wouldn't recommend giving this to a young child because you don't want them to choke on anything. You could also use some bigger eyes. I do have some, I think these might be 9mm ones, and those would look cute as well. But I went for the smaller ones, and I just did a little embroidered mouth really, really simply at the end. It's backed with a piece of felt, which is just, you sew on 3 sides and then you just put some stuffing in here and then sew up the last side. I've used polyester stuffing, but you could use anything, yarn scraps, fabric scraps, whatever you've got. So what you'll need for this is obviously a crochet hook. You'll need some yarn. Let's just tip this out. That's the quickest way, isn't it? Usual rainbow colours. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. These teeny tiny little balls are from the dollar store. I think I got them from Dollarama, which is a Canadian dollar store, but probably just about any dollar store would have these. They come in packs, Can't remember how many came in a pack, but each little skein is 10 grams and they are 100% cotton. You can get acrylic ones as well. And they're perfect for this because you get lots of different colours for like $1.25. So there's your rainbow selection. And then you also need white, a baby pink, a baby blue, a brown, and a black. Apart from the hook and the yarn, you will also need a needle and thread, the aforementioned safety eyes, a little scrap of felt, about 2 inches by 3 inches. I've already cut a couple out of this, and it wasn't even a complete felt square to start with, but there's enough there to make a third. Oh yes, I haven't shown you the second one I made yet, but I'll do that in a second. Some scissors, and a yarn needle for sewing your triangle to your rectangle. I have one in there. I just love this tin. I put it in view just because I love the tin. So eyes, needle, small needle for thread, thread felt, yarn, scissors. Tea, absolutely essential, of course. And I did make a second one. So once I had finished the prototype, getting in a right mess here, aren't I? I noticed that because this side of my triangle was a bit longer than the side of my rectangle, I had this curved shape here. It made a weird shape. And so I added an extra row of the red, which actually balances out the purple quite nicely. And so it's a bit wider, and so the triangle fits better across that end. So yes, it's kind of a flag, it's kind of an amigurumi, it's whatever you want. And the nice thing about it is there's hardly any ends to weave in, because even though you change colours lots, you're just going to hide the ends inside the little pillow that you create. Super easy. Just uses chains and single crochet. Now let's get going. I'm going to work the rectangle first from bottom to top. We're going to start here, work up. Now, I think this is probably a fingering weight yarn, and I am using a 3.5mm hook. I could probably have gone down a size to this to make it a bit tighter, but as long as you're using a hook that's suitable for your yarn and the filling is not showing through or leaking out, then you're fine. So we start by putting a slip knot on our hook and then chaining 16. And then we're going to work back across the chain, starting with the second chain from the hook. So that would be there. And I like to go into the top of the V and through underneath 2 strands. So that's your first row. Chaining into a foundation chain is always the fiddliest part of crochet. Now we're going to chain one and turn. Now we're going to work now 15 single crochets across the row, starting with the first stitch. My hook is going under both strands of the top V of each stitch. It does like to twist that first bit, so it's a little bit of a struggle. There we go, that's the first 2 rows of purple done. Now I'm going to chain one and I'm going to snip my yarn and fasten that off. You can leave your tails pretty short. We're going to trim them even shorter when we're done with this piece. Okay, once you've finished that second purple row, we're going to turn it over. See how much it likes to twist. It'll get over that in a minute. We're going to grab our blue and make a slip knot. Put it on the hook. There are other ways of joining in a new color, but I feel like this is the firmest one because you've fastened off your old color and I'm having some fun times with this slip knot. Because you've fastened off your old color and you're starting with a slip knot for your second color, it's more secure. So for the first row of the blue, you will want to keep your finger on that slip knot as you make the stitch. You go into the first stitch and then you pull through, still holding on to that first stitch, and then pull through again. And there you've made your first standing single crochet. And now you can work 15 stitches across that row. If you're fairly new to crocheting and you're not sure about where the first and last stitch of each row is, you can use stitch markers. Those little locking stitch markers that look a bit like plastic safety pins. Once you get to the end of the row here, you can put a stitch marker in there, and then when you've chained one and turned, you'll know exactly where to work for the first stitch. And then after you've done this first stitch over here, you could put a marker in it so you know where to finish. Or just count the 15 each time, because your stitch count should be remaining constant throughout this rectangle. Chain one, turn the work, and we're going to do a second row of the blue. I think this would be really fun in a very chunky, plushy yarn as well, or really anything in between. If you've already got the scraps at home in the right colours, then it wouldn't be a very large outlay. If you're short of some colours, maybe you could scrounge some off a friend, because you need such a small amount of each colour. You could probably put it together quite easily. 2 rows of blue finished. Now we're just going to chain 1, cut our yarn and fasten off, and turn the work. Time for the green. Standing single crochet into the first stitch, and then 15 single crochets across the row. Row 1 of the green done, chain 1, turn, and work back. I finished the row, chained 1, and now I can cut my green. And we're going to turn that over and start the yellow. We're going to work 2 rows of yellow in the same way. My yellow stripe is done. You can see how airy that looks. It probably shouldn't be that loose. If you wanted to be a bit more conscientious than I, you might want to go for a 2.75mm hook or something like that. Just to make the stitches tighter. You have nimble hands and good eyes. But as I say, there's no reason why you can't use a DK yarn or a worsted or even a bulky. Make a whole range of them in different sizes. There's my orange row done. In case you're noticing my frame changing as I'm working through this, it's because I keep knocking my teeny tripod over with my phone on, and of course with the phone on it's top heavy and very prone to falling over. I have been turning the air blue today with this tripod. Okay, so now 2 rows of the red. Here's your little rainbow pride flag. You could stop at this point if you don't want to put the extra bits on, and you could just make this into a little flag all by itself. I'm just adding this little bit to insert here because I forgot to mention you should be doing 3 rows of red before you fasten off. So I had already started putting this black in here, and then I realized I had only done 2 rows of red. So 3 rows of red. It works better that way. Don't worry about all these ends. We're going to hide those away a bit later. So the right side of your flag is the one that you're looking at when this tail is on the bottom left and all these tails are on the right hand side. That's the right side. You've got your red at the top and your purple at the bottom. So we're just going to put that aside for a minute, and we'll put this on top of it so it doesn't curl up and escape from us. Now we're going to work on the triangle. You're starting with the white. And this literally uses a minuscule amount of white yarn. So we're not making a slip knot this time, we're making a magic ring. So it's a bit like making a slip knot at the first part, but then you're not tightening it up yet. So I like to always do a chain 1 when I've formed the ring. So there's your ring. So what's going to happen later is you're going to tighten. As you can see, it tightens up when you pull on the tail, but we're not going to do that yet. So there's my magic ring with my chain 1. So we're going to work 2 single crochets into the ring. And then we're going to do a chain 1. And then we're going to do 2 more single crochets. So 2 single crochets, a chain 1, 2 single crochets. Now I'm going to chain 1 and fasten that off. Once you've cut your yarn, you can pull that tail through. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tighten our magic ring. You see how it makes a little tiny triangle. My phone seems to want to focus only on the background and not what's in the foreground for some reason. But there we go. So this tiny triangle, we're now going to flip it over. And we're going to grab our pink yarn and put a slip knot on our hook. So first we are going to do 2 single crochets into that very first stitch. And then we're going to do a single crochet into the second one. So 2 singles in the first stitch, 1 single in the second. Now what we're going to do is we're going to aim for the chain 1 space. You have to look for the leg of that single crochet and the leg of that single crochet. And stick your hook in between. We're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet into that chain 1 space. And then we're going to go, sometimes what you have to do is you have to pull this to the right so that you can see where the next stitch is. So there's the next stitch. I know it's super fiddly and my camera is not focusing in the right place. So 1 stitch into there and then 2 stitches into the last stitch in the row. Chain 1, fasten off. Pull your yarn tail through. And this is what you just did. And now you're going to flip it over and start working over here and work across the row making that V shape. So now we want our blue yarn. Slip knot on the hook, 2 single crochets into the first stitch. Three singles, 1, 2, 3, and then into that chain 1 space, which is really hard to see, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. To make the corner, pull that a little to the right so that you can see where your next stitches are. You see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what you want. So 1, 2, 3, and then 2 single crochets in that last stitch. Right there. And then chain 1 and fasten off. This is what we have so far. Cute little triangle, which we're now going to turn over and work another row with the brown. 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 5 singles in the next 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you're making your corner, so you need to find your chain 1 space here and single crochet, chain 1, single crochet for the corner. Pull it to the side a little bit so that you can see where your next stitch is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 singles in that last stitch. Chain 1 and fasten off. Only one more colour to go. Flip it over, slip knot on the hook of the black, 2 singles in the first stitch, and then 1 in each of the next 7 stitches, then single crochet, chain 1, single crochet into the chain 1 space, and then when you've done your 7 stitches, 2 stitches into that last one. Chain 1, fasten off. There's your little triangle done. So this was our last row. The tops of the stitches angle slightly towards you. This is going to be your right side, so you don't flip it at this point. Once you've fastened this off, you keep it this way up. So you're going to need a little bit more black because we are going to border our rainbow with black and attach the triangle at the same time. We'll put the triangle aside for now. Turn it upside down. Now you'll see where you worked into your chains. There is a loop left for each stitch. And that's what you're going to be working into. So you'll start with a standing single crochet into that first loop there. And then you'll work across the chain loops. Do stretch out a little bit, but it'll look fine when it's done. There should be 15 of these loops, because you started out with 15 single crochets, so there should be 15 loops to work into. And if you can't get your hook in there that way, sometimes it helps to turn it around and put the pointier bit in first. There's 15 stitches along the bottom. So we're going to chain one just to go around the corner. I'm just going to push these tails to the back to keep them out of the way. So we're going to do one single crochet in each row end. So one in that purple, second in that purple. So it's easy because you're just doing 2 single crochets per colored stripe. I've worked across here. I did my chain one for the corner. I've worked 12 stitches up the side, and I'm going to do another chain one for the corner. Even though there are 3 rows of red, I'm only doing 2 into the row ends here, because when I turn the corner, I am then going to work into all of the stitches across the top, and there should be 15 of those. So I'll come back to you when I've done that. I've worked my 15 stitches across the top. I'm going to chain 1. And now we're at the point where we're going to attach our little triangle. So what helps is if you grab a pin or a chunky needle. Oh look, my needle has disappeared. There should have been a needle in there. Let's see if I can find it. I'm going to use this darning needle just to hold this in place while I crochet across the end. Now you want your long edge of your triangle to match up with your side edge of your flag, and you want this point here to line up where the green and the yellow meet. So I'm just going to use that to attach them together just so they don't jump about while I am joining them. So ideally what you want to end up with is 12 stitches across this end so that it matches the other end. So we're going to go into this green, black, Nicola, and make a single crochet for our first stitch. Now you know that this is the center, so you should be at about 6 stitches by the time you get to the white. I'm not going to worry too much about which row end I go through on the back. Just going to try and make sure I get 6 stitches to the middle. So that's 2. Three, 4, 5. And my 6th stitch is going right into that magic ring there, through that yellow. So that's kind of what you want to aim for, is to have your magic ring join happen at just about the point where the green and the yellow meet, because that's the center of that edge. So I've done 6 stitches. Doesn't look super tidy. That's why this is called Stitches and Slapdashery, folks. So if I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more stitches in there, I might even do a second stitch into that magic ring and then go into the green so that it's completely balanced, and then into here. So I need 5 more stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going into that black corner of the triangle and then into that black spot there. It doesn't matter if it looks messy on the back, it's going to be covered with felt anyway. So as long as you have done your best to do 12 stitches across that side edge and you're happy with how it looks, then we'll finish with a chain 1 and then a slip stitch into your very first black border stitch that you started with, and then fasten off. I'm going to give this a little bit of a haircut. Just cut all my tails down to 1 inch. Now we need to grab that needle and thread it with this yarn. Now if this was a really, really thick yarn, you might want to use thread instead for this part, because it would be really obvious otherwise. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fasten it at the back. Again, you can just leave a tail hanging because no one's going to see it. And then what I do is come up just in 1 loop of the edge of the stitches from the last round of your triangle, and then down through the rainbow part, and then come up through the next stitch, but just that 1 strand of it. So I have just sewn it down all the way along the very edge, and then I'm just going to fasten off here. If sewing isn't your strong suit, then just tack it down at the point. You could just do a stitch right here. You don't necessarily need to attach it all the way along the edge. Now what you want to do is to put your eyes in. I always find this a struggle. I believe that there is actually a tool that you can buy to put these things in, because otherwise I just break my thumbnails every single time. So position your eyes how you want them. Sometimes eyes that are further apart are cuter. And you do want to allow some room for the mouth to go fairly close to them and sort of between them. So maybe I've got 3 yellow stitches showing between the eyes there. I think that's about right. So you're going to just push it through, and then we're going to grab a washer. Now I think that the flat side of the washer should go against the fabric and the curved side goes away. That makes sense to me. So that's how I do it. And you're going to want this on a firm background. And now I'm going to fumble these on. I'm having a hell of a time here trying to get these pushed on without them slipping away from me. So I'm going to try some of my non-slip vinyl underneath. Hallelujah, I seem to have done it. If anyone out there in YouTube land has a trick for doing that without a special tool, I'd love to hear it, because that was so annoying. Okay, my little eyes are in. Now I'm going to go back and use a little bit of the red yarn to make a mouth. I have doubled red yarn. And all I do is I come up in this stitch here, close to this left eye, leave a little bit of a tail. And then I go down into stitch a couple of stitches away, but I don't pull it tight. So then I come up just below and in the middle. Of course it fell right out. So my needle comes up, and then I make sure that the strand of yarn goes above those 2 strands of yarn. And then I go back down through that same place just to make a little V. Needs a little bit of a tighten up there. It does look funny from the back, doesn't it? The eyes look very froggy from the back. So once you've got your tension how you like it, you could use 1 strand instead if you don't like the 2. And then I'm going to cut that. I'm just going to knot it because it's going to get hidden by the backing anyway. Trim this. I've cut a piece of black felt, the same size as my little flag. We're going to sew them together. And then we're going to put some stuffing in the middle. It's a good idea if you can match the outside border round of your crochet with your felt and your thread, because the thread is going to show around the edge. So what I like to do is start just by putting a knot in the end of my thread and then taking it through like that. And of course it's going to have to be a bigger knot. I've made a knot in the end of my thread, and I'm going to go from the inside to the outside and then hold these guys together. And I'm going to whip stitch the edges together, starting at this top right corner. So from the felt through to the edge, and I'm going to whip stitch going through the felt and then up through the middle of each of my single crochets. It's so hard to see because it's black. And all these little annoying bits of yarn are going to get in your way. But you can tuck them in as you go. By the time you're done, it'll be all neat and tidy. I've gone around all three sides and I'm up to here, and I'm just going to grab some threads that I have been saving. Well, yarn tails, not really threads. I think most of this was trimmings from my Technicolor Dreamcoat project. So I'm just going to stuff a few in here. You really need something. You could leave it flat, but your safety eyes are going to make a bump inside. So I think it makes sense to have a little bit of padding in there. It doesn't need to be a lot. You don't need to make it into a really thick pillow or anything, but just enough to make it look more even and smooth. You want the backs of the eyes to sit straight, otherwise your eyes might look cross-eyed. We wouldn't want that, would we? Yeah, a little bit more. And I don't even know why I kept these yarn tails. Normally I toss them. But they came in useful this time. I think I should have cut myself a bit of a longer piece of thread. Going to make sure it doesn't come unthreaded. I've made a knot, and then I'm going to bury my end inside there. And it's done. Well, trying to film that and crocheting it at the same time was a lot more complicated than just making it. And we are all finished. Happy little face. Nice backing. You could turn that into a pin. You could probably embed a magnet inside there if you wanted to make it into a fridge magnet, or add a safety pin so you could attach it to your clothing. You could add a little D-ring onto it so that you could clip it onto a backpack, or a swivel hook maybe. Yes, a swivel hook would be a really good idea. Why didn't I think of that? I still could add a swivel hook. So it's a multi-purpose little progress pride flag. I hope you found that helpful. I now have 3 of these little things. My initial prototype, my second version, and the one I made today. The third one was the hardest because, yeah, I was trying to do it while filming at the same time. So if you're seeing this, I didn't completely abandon the project in disgust. And I considered that the recording I took was adequate enough to put on the YouTubes. So, phew. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up and share it among your friends. That would be awesome. And remember that this channel is always a welcoming place for everybody. And I appreciate you for being here. Thanks so much. Bye for now.